Hello and welcome to this Quiz Academy video for International Women's Day. And unusually for Quiz Academy, we're not going to tell you about things you need to know. We're going to tell you about some people that should be asked about more in quiz. We have a selection of questions about women from history who don't necessarily come up in quizzes very often. And we hope through this video we can do something to help with the greater representation of women from history in quiz. We know some of the women covered in this video may well be people you've never heard of before, and for that reason you won't necessarily know the answers to the questions, but we hope that you will think that they are worth knowing about and worth asking about. So without further ado, here are some questions on women from history. We'll put the answers to the questions in the video description below. Question 1. A statue of Carlotta Lucumi, an enslaved woman who led a rebellion in 1844, stands in the ruins of the Triunvirato sugar mill on which Caribbean island? What was the name of the Irish pirate queen described as a director of thieves and murderers at sea, who in 1593 personally petitioned Queen Elizabeth I of England for the release of her son, and not only secured his release, but also her return to the seas? Which Queen of Sweden, described by a French duke as knowing more than our Academy and the Sorbonne, ruled in her own right from 1632 onwards, but abdicated in 1654 in order to live an independent life in Europe, where she scandalised society with her dress, her liaisons with both sexes, and her involvement in politics? Which Egyptian woman founded the feminist publication Bint al-Nil, meaning Daughters of the Nile, and later founded a political party of the same name, and led 2 hunger strikes in the cause of women's suffrage? Women were granted the vote in 1957, but she was placed under house arrest until her death in 1975. The Indian National Army's female regiment is named after which woman? The Rani of Jhansi, who was killed leading an armed resistance to the British annexation of her home state in 1858. Anna Smith Strong and Elizabeth Bergen are among the women theorized to have been which spy of the American Revolution, known by a numerical designation? Which British-born Muslim woman, an author of children's books and a descendant of Tipu Sultan, was executed in Dachau concentration camp for her work for the Special Operations Executive in occupied France supporting the French resistance? Njinga Mbande ruled the kingdom of Ndongo until she was driven from it by the Portuguese in 1629, and they gave the kingdom what new name? For the next 26 years she waged war on the Portuguese from the neighbouring kingdom of Matamba. Queen Rana Valona I of the Merina people ruled on which African island for 33 years in the second half of the 19th century, a reign marked by both its brutality in her attempts to control the whole island and her successful defence of the island against foreign powers. From 1828 to 1830, Tairina Rira led Australian Aborigine attacks on English settlers in which modern-day Australian state? In Vietnam, in around 40 CE, the Trung sisters conquered 65 cities and forced the troops of which Chinese dynasty out of the country? Which queen of the Massagetai, a nomadic tribe of the Central Asian steppes, rejected an offer of marriage from the Persian king Cyrus the Great, prompting Cyrus to invade her territory? She ultimately defeated and killed Cyrus in battle. Autumn wind, autumn rain, fill my heart with sorrows were the last words of which Chinese feminist poet and revolutionary who was executed in 1907 for attempting to overthrow the ruling Qing dynasty? Edith Margaret Garrard taught which martial art to suffragettes for self-defense, including to the bodyguard of the Women's Social and Political Union? Zenobia, who in the 3rd century CE took Egypt from the Romans and conquered territory as far away as Ankara, was the queen of which city in modern-day Syria? Fortifications known as Amina's Walls were created by Queen Amina of Zaria, who over a 34-year period in the late 16th and early 17th centuries expanded her territory in which modern-day country? Which woman who ruled Tuscany in the late 11th and early 12th centuries mediated between Pope Gregory and the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV at her castle in Canossa, as well as leading troops in battle in defence of the Pope? The Georgian epic poem, The Knight and the Panther Skin, was dedicated to which queen, who in a quarter-century reign in the early 13th century was the architect of Georgia's Golden Age? Deir el-Bahari is the site of the mortuary temple of which queen and pharaoh of Egypt, who ruled for 2 decades until around 1458 BCE? Zoe Porphyrogenitor ruled which empire briefly in the mid-11th century after outliving 2 husbands and a stepson who had schemed against her? Anacaona was the ruler of the Zaragua, the last stronghold of which indigenous people of Hispaniola, when the Spanish, under the pretext of a peaceful meeting, massacred her people and executed her in 1503. Which 14th century daughter of Louis the Great of Hungary and Poland ruled Poland in her own right, and in 1997 was canonized as the Saint of Queens and of a united Europe? Queen Seondok of Silla, who ruled from 632 to 647, was the first and only female ruler in which country until Park Geun-hye in the 21st century. In the 9th century BCE, Sammu Rammat ruled which empire as regent, an empire that stretched from Mesopotamia to Egypt. Which trans woman who founded the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries with Marsha P. Johnson following the 1969 Stonewall riots was called the Rosa Parks of the transgender community in a Village Voice obituary. The 25th of November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It was established in 1999, 39 years after the assassination of which three sisters who were political activists in the Dominican Republic. Dubbed the Mother of Black Resistance, Lilian Ngoyi was the first woman elected to the national executive of which South African organisation. Shortly afterwards, she was arrested for high treason and was one of the 156 treason trial defendants. In 1976, Jaya Bin Desai led a strike of South Asian immigrant workers at which company's film processing laboratory in northwest London. By the next year, 20,000 people were picketing the factory, leading to mass arrests. Nazaria Lagos was dubbed the Florence Nightingale of Panay for her humanitarian work in the Spanish-American War and which other subsequent war. She also helped to make the national flag that flew briefly 44 years before her country's independence. Which PR executive turned gay rights activist was instrumental in the launch of the first ever lesbian community centre in the US and wrote the 1976 book From the Closet to the Courts. Which congresswoman ran for the Democratic nomination for US President in 1972 under the slogan Unbought and Unbothered? And which teacher refused to give up her seat on a Tennessee train in 1884, was physically removed, sued the railway company and won? She later became the editor of the publication Free Speech before moving to Chicago, where she investigated lynchings, campaigned for women's suffrage, founded the Negro League, and was a founding member of the NAACP. Well, there you go. We hope you've enjoyed those questions, and we hope you want to know more about these women and want to see more of them coming up in quiz. If you want to know more about them, they are all included in this book, Forgotten Women, the Leaders, by Zing Tsjeng. It's a great book, very readable. We highly recommend it. But more than that, we recommend asking questions about women who don't normally get featured in quizzes. Let us know in the comments below how you got on, and let us know what you thought of the questions we asked.